How can I forgive a person? Can you please discuss this on the call? I went and read all the posts regarding this in our group, but I quite couldn't understand how to forgive. What is the process? Forgiveness, unconditional love is the virtue of the self, they say, and it is mentioned that a lot of spiritual practice is required to truly forgive a person. If they say that a lot of spiritual practice is required for anything, don't believe in it. Okay, first and foremost. Because now, see how you believe in this, and now the mind picks this up as a template. It starts to view everything through these goggles, and now you will move forward from in trying to forgive someone while your lens of perception is it takes a long time to forgive. It's just the mind buying time. The lens you look through is what you see. If you wear red goggles, you will see a red world. The world is not red. Set down these assumptions, because you see we're seeing in any given moment we have a ton of assumptions, and that is exactly what we experience. That is the veiling power of mind. Again, what's the solution? Silence, right? Sometimes when we begin our guidances in this way, where I say, any expectation that you are coming onto this call with or this guidance with, let it go. Be totally open to not receiving anything here. Any idea that you have of meditation or whatever, let it go. These are all because these are little, like the tons of, this is like the thick lens of perception that you now start to see everything through. So what you'll see, there's a quote by Nisargadatta Maharaj. He's like, spiritual practice is actually just mainly about finding what to give up. And he doesn't mean like just things. No, he's talking about what ideologies, what expectations, what attachments, right? It's the spiritual practice is acknowledging that they're even there, because otherwise you don't know that they're there. It's almost like if you were born with red goggles and you for the whole your whole life you thought that the world was red, but the world is not red. And you don't even know you're wearing goggles. So spiritual practice first, like, and see how it is actually, we're quite fortunate. Everything comes into your experience. You did not ask for this teaching. You did not ask for it to come across to come across it at this particular time or whatever. The teaching comes in and it's telling you, hey, wake up, put down your shades, put down your goggles, see things clearly. The goggles are distorting your view. And that is on this distortion, on the behalf of this distortion, you suffer. Don't try to stop suffering while continuing to attach yourself to the goggles. Just be willing to put it down. But we're so attached to this. That's what we write. Our unwillingness to step out of the mental prison. And so, for a while we reject this. So don't keep picking up these ideas of a lot of this is needed for, or a lot of spiritual practice is needed for this, or if anyone says anything of a limiting nature, you don't need to pick it up. You don't need to believe in it. And in fact, look at your own self. Anything that you approach, how you approach anything, how sometimes you come onto these calls. Notice, am I coming onto this call with some sort of expectation, some sort of desire to like get something, and acknowledge that, and then just no longer care for it? It's that simple. Letting go of like this attachment isn't a process. You acknowledge it and you no longer care for it. You're no longer interested in it. Just let it be. See how automatically you're much more fresh, much more available, much more open now to whatever may happen on the call or anything, right? Like even let's say you're going to dinner with a friend. See, like, am I going in with some sort of expectation? Am I going in with something to protect? Am I going with something to prove? Do I want something out of this person? Do I want this person to think something about me that I would really like? Drop all that stuff. What is required to drop all that stuff, right? Obviously, you can just no longer care, just no longer be interested in supporting those things anymore. But sometimes you feel too sticky, like how could I not care? And that is where the practice of the silence comes in. Only in silence does this distance between you and these ideas and lenses of perception, this distance becomes bigger and bigger, from where you can first become aware of these assumptions and these attachments and these expectations, and then you can have the wisdom to discard. So now to your question. How can I forgive a person? Just notice how you, first of all, you do plenty of things that are unforgivable. Maybe not to that person, but to this person. Maybe not to any people, but to the world. And notice how you don't even know what your next thought is. If you don't know what your next thought is, how much do you know what your next action is? So you see and perhaps this is a little subtle teaching, deeper teaching, but see if you're open to this. You must acknowledge how not in charge you are of your own actions, your own thoughts. And this isn't necessarily just an excuse for bad behavior. It is just a letting go of intense responsibility over your own thoughts, your own ownership over your own actions, your own thoughts. Because you see, we're born in this sort of identification, this great sense of doership. A better word for ego is actually sense of doership, sense of ownership over the thoughts. That's why that's the whole unentanglement process, as we spoke of earlier. You are recognizing that you are not these thoughts, you are not these actions, you are not these emotions, you are not these sensations. The greater sense of ownership you have over your own thinking, your own acting, your own doing, you're going to feel intense pride when you do something good or you think something good, and you're going to feel intense guilt when you do something bad. Perhaps notice how your life has been revolving around the two. Each is its own type of suffering. Even your pride brings suffering, and your guilt is obviously suffering. And the more ownership you have over your own stuff, the more you're going to hold other people to, like they are just this bundle of thoughts and feelings and actions. And everything will become, again, you're too much into that mental world where it's just like, this person did this person did that. How can I do? So this brings up many other questions, I'm sure, in the mind, like, oh my God, but then we can't hold anybody responsible. No, that's not what I'm saying. All I'm asking you to is to first see that you yourself do many unforgivable things. Maybe not in the same degree as others, as the one you can't seem to forgive. But see that that is your own conditioning at play, and that is that person's own conditioning at play. And know that if you do not forgive them, it's not like only by your unforgiveness they will continue to suffer. They may or may not suffer without you forgiving or not forgiving them. Forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is a belief you hold yourself. And with this unforgiveness, you continue to limit your own self into this identification of I am this, you are that, of separation, of isolation. Not only do you isolate the other, you isolate your own self. So how to forgive others? I wouldn't give you any advice on how to forgive others. I would simply ask you to look at your own self. I'm not interested in the story, my story or yours. Because at the end of the day, you're suffering on my behalf, I'm suffering on your behalf, I'm suffering on someone else's behalf, they're suffering on my behalf. We're all just causing each other suffering. On the thought and action level, that is the world. See that you are always causing others suffering as well. And others are causing you suffering. You suffer on behalf of others, right? The other people suffering affects you, your suffering affects them, your actions affect them, their actions affect you. That is what we're to acknowledge this greater harmony and step out of blame and ownership. You have to step out of mind. You have to step out of conventional belief. You have to step out of story. You have to step out of he did this, I did this, she did that, he said this. So I don't know how you're going to forgive anybody from within that context. You can't. Seek to understand yourself. See if you are that which is suffering. You say, I am suffering because I'm not able to forgive. Look at your own suffering. As I said to Ellen earlier, see if that which, because you just say these things, you see? You say, I am suffering. You say, I am this, I am that. See if that which you are is capable of suffering. See if the suffering is what you are. Don't just say these things like it's your experience. And you say, but it is my experience. And so you're being pointed to look and verify if that's actually the case. And go in with the approach of not just dissolving your and ending your suffering, but to see, to understand what is actually going on. Am I perhaps wearing these goggles through which I'm seeing something a distorted version of what is? You're setting down your arrogance to see that which is the way that it is. So I'd also invite you again to listen to the answer that, the conversation that we had when we began this call. Because even if I teach you how to forgive, you're going to forgive this maybe, and then something else happens, and then you can't forgive that one. So again, so you see what like the what we discuss here is not we're not dealing with the technicals. We're not dealing with things within the mind's like million concerns. How are you going to deal with each one? You see, when you're tossing out your garbage, do you go through your garbage and see each thing and toss it out one by one, or you just take the whole thing and you toss it out? That's why it's called the direct path, direct teaching.